So, okay, Gabriel, let's kick it off. So,
Absolutely.
Let's pick up where I left off a moment ago and talking about the smart city. So, I'd love for you to explain to us what exactly is the smarter world and how is Verses helping to make it a reality?
You know, we all realize that the digital and the physical worlds are starting to merge together. And we've been enjoying this through the World Wide Web at some level as a sort of digital library in the cloud. When our mobile apps and smartphones came out, suddenly there was things that the real world could be involved in. You could order a car to pick you up and take you somewhere. You could order foods wherever you are. You could check into someone else's house, Airbnb, Uber. It's kind of a Web 2.5 almost. It's sort of geospatial. But we've all seen these sci-fi films where there's holographic information floating in space, right? There's robots and drones and sort of intelligent, artificial intelligence systems that are automating all kinds of things. Amazon Go, for instance, has a store in San Francisco. Got 1 million sensors. You walk in, you grab anything you want, you walk out. It's fully automated. So that's what I would consider a little smarter than your average store. But what if every store was like that? What if every restaurant was like that? What if everything was essentially the same experience you have when it's DoorDash or it's Uber or it's Airbnb? It's fully automated. Your account and your identity and the transactions themselves just kind of flow. Of course, extend that into the real world even deeper, and you can imagine that with a car that picks you up from here to there, everything can become sort of synchronized in this relay race of activities. And so that's kind of this what we call the spatial web. Some people call it Web 3.0, some people call it Industry 4.0. I'm sure there'll be 5 other acronyms by the end of the week. Crypto guys keep changing their definition of it every month, but it is really this merging of the digital and physical. And at Verses, we're developing new applications and even a platform to develop these sort of next generation AI-powered applications for it.
So, okay, you mentioned the spatial web, and actually when we first met months ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago, that was one of the things that immediately made sense to me. You gave me this really cool example, and that's something I'd like to get into it. So I would say, and actually you're an author of a book that coined the term spatial web.
That's
so I would like to dig more into that. So why don't we talk a little bit about what the spatial web is, and that example you gave me, Wayfinder, we can walk through that, what it is. I think that's something that will really resonate.
Sure. So one of the first applications we've developed on our platform enables warehouse workers inside of warehouses. And pretty much every object in this room was transported through a warehouse at some point. It's a $15 trillion business. Most of us didn't care about the supply chain before COVID, but then suddenly everyone's impacted by it. I ordered that furniture, where is it? Where are those shoes? Where's that purse? Where's it? And so it turns out that it's a really poorly organized environment. And just today, like, anyone here can jump in the car, look at a Google map, and have it route you through the city, as well as anyone here without that's lived here for 20 or 30 years, right? Why? Because the intelligence, the spatial intelligence, the physical intelligence is built into the application. Well, imagine that for the inside of any building. In the warehouse space, what we do is we build a 3-dimensional map of the entire interior, 100,000 square feet. Instead of having addresses for buildings and restaurants and parts, we have addresses for every single box in the facility. And essentially, then we give the worker an app that looks just like a Google Maps or Waze for warehouse workers, and the AI dynamically routes them through the facility. What we see here is a 35 to 50% productivity increase. And so this is a pretty unprecedented example of what happens when you just add a little bit of AI to a common everyday sort of physical, real world example.
So extremely fascinating. And on that topic, so with that example, I remember seeing one of the things that really stood out to me was the quality of your partnerships. So you have a lot of deals like in the pipeline and currently active with some like pretty big name brands. Do you want to talk a bit about your partnership?
Yeah, so that first deal, we did a test. It was a warehouse company in Los Angeles. They also have facilities up here in Canada. They're a small company called NRI. They do about $100 million a year. We essentially saved them $8 million and we make it 2. They signed a $34 million contract for 10 years off that very first deal because we basically completely changed their business. The book that you mentioned that we wrote, The Spatial Web, talks about how humans and machines and AI are going to transform the world for the better. Deloitte wrote a report about that. You probably see their name up there in the upper left-hand corner. We have a partnership with them now to become a reseller. They wrote a report called the Spatial Web, the future of computing, what business leaders need to know about it. And that went out to all the CIOs and CTOs in the Global 1000. And we started getting calls from everybody on that list. So since then, we've signed pilots with Honeywell, with AstraZeneca, with Volvo, with Mars Wrigley. You're talking about millions and millions of square footage all around the world. And so we're deploying those pilots this year, and we expect to convert each of those to 7, 8-figure contracts. Maybe not 10 years, maybe 5 years, but these are 10 to 100 times larger than the company that we just completed our first trial with. In addition, the rest of the pipeline in the middle there is all come in. So you see Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, et cetera, et cetera. So we really kind of tap the vein for how to optimize real-world activities, and we're starting in the logistics space here because that's really the squeeze point for the entire supply chain. And then over in the upper left, you see really reseller and channel partners. We can't scale to meet the demand we have. There's another 100 Fortune 500s that have contacted us over the last year or so. And so really working with these large channel partners that really do the system integrations for the Global 1000 is the key to scaling. So very exciting. We're listing on the NEO on Tuesday. We just raised $18.5 million with our good friends at Caris Capital here that introduced us to the Canadian public markets. Thank you guys. And it's a very, very exciting time. It's an absolute honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you. This is a company you guys should really pay close attention to. It's unfortunate we have such a limited time because it's well worth diving into this, because this is truly one of the most game-changing technological shifts that we're going to see. So I'm always humbled to chat with you. I realize how little I know, but thank you so much for coming. Guys, round of applause. We're going to get into the quiz.